All right, everybody, welcome. We've got Jesse Beaudoin on here, longtime friend. I think I must have met him early on in my career in real estate, and we've just
Well,
been
how old is Lab Coats now? You guys are
Lab Coats is 10 years as of October, so we're heading
uh,
into 11.
so call action is 10 years as of February. So
Oh, so like,
so
yeah,
we're pretty close. So I remember the early days of Lab Coats when you guys were, 3,000, 5,000, 20,000, all those like thresholds of like, growing until where we're at now, north of what, 150, 180,000 people
yeah,
now.
real, well, Jesse, real people, not
Yeah,
bots. Right? That's the
exactly. Yes. Yeah, for sure. For
That's
sure.
the difference. All right. Well, if you don't know Jesse already, he's one of the, I think, and a lot of our friends think the same, one of the most brilliant people in real estate. Stays on the back though, Jesse. You always kind of like say things from the back, but when you drop knowledge, it's like, whoa, that was really good, bro. So Jesse's super smart. So you won't see him go out in front and say it from the front lines, but pay attention to what he says on the back because it's impactful. He built a company called Call Action, like he said, about 10 years ago. And recently he added Verify, which is what we're going to talk about today because of the whole TCPA situation. I'll put up the link here, but I just wanted to show you what it is. It's an all-in-one DNC phone checker and email scrubbing solution so that you stay compliant because the last thing you want is a lawsuit coming after you or your brokerage with real estate being at the forefront of every single lawsuit right now. So this is pretty easy. In fact, I'll put up the link right now because I know we're going to get a question on it as Jesse starts talking about what it does and more importantly, how it helps with the whole TCPA situation. So Jesse, how long ago did you create this? And because I know parts of it were already there. So when did you just transfer it?
So, what has happened is Call Action basically has always been a platform that focused on compliance to begin with. So we always have done like back-end scans for all of our existing users. So we would check for reassigned phone numbers. We would validate phone numbers to check is it a landline and stuff like that, do a reverse data append. And then we would check to see basically if there was known litigators in your list kind of in real time. So checking proactively as a lead would come in to see, is this someone who has filed, any kind of complaints with the FCC or under TCPA or under DNC for any issues? And so we've always done that to kind of keep everyone compliant. And then as I was kind of watching what was taking place and the changes that really took place back in December of 2023, we decided to separate our solution and create a standalone solution because there's a lot of customers out there that just need to like do this one time and just kind of clean up their database and do a hard reset. And we just figured that we would build the simplest solution for everyone that's out there. It's kind of self-serve. It's already built using all of our existing technology that's scanning over 10 million leads a month, basically, and doing all of this stuff because it's all built on
Mm-hmm.
AWS and top of the line servers by our dedicated
Okay.
dev team. And so we just made this as a completely standalone solution to take care of individuals that need, whether you have a small database of, a couple hundred people or a couple thousand people or, a million people or 2 million people, we can scan all of that stuff and give you a hard reset and kind of give you some guidance. So that was the reason or the impetus to launch Verify back in November officially to kind of everyone. And what we did that was kind of neat is that we combined email verification with that. And we'll get into the reasons why, because if someone is on the DNC, you only have a certain type of communication that you can do. And so we try and make that as a all-in-one solution that's really simple for you to use. So
All right. So then for those people that are in here wondering, well, why and what and how and all about the TCPA, where do we start with that? Why should we be concerned?
yeah, so I'll start with kind of a little bit of the history, and I'm going to make this as simple as I possibly can because it doesn't have to be complicated. There's a lot of fear that's kind of going around out there right now
Yeah.
and a lot of concern. And the reality is, at the end of the day, There's some change. It's no different than what happened with the NAR settlement and things like that. And at the end of the day, it's probably for the better. So let's talk a little bit about the history of TCPA and the relationship between the three main federal laws that you have to pay attention to. So the first one, you have the TCPA, which is the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. So that covers anything that is transmitted through phone lines. So this would be call or text messages only. Has nothing to do with email or any other type of technology. So just the things that are transmitted through phone lines. So that is regulated by the FCC. Those rules for TCPA have been around since 1991. That's when it first kind of came out. More recently, this year, or last year, they codified that text messages counted or were classified officially as a phone call. In the past, it was assumed that that's what it was, but more recently, they passed that in the code and updated all of their code. So that's the primary branch that you have, is the TCPA. So that kind of regulates any type of telephone outreach from businesses to people. The second component at a federal level is something called the National Do Not Call Registry. That was created in 2003. And what happens is there's this interaction between the TCPA and the National Do Not Call Registry. So the Do Not Call Registry is where you can register a phone number. And what you're basically saying is, if my phone number is on there, it is illegal for you to contact me with an unsolicited offer, whether for goods or services or anything like that. If basically I don't comply with that, I can file a complaint. So that's kind of the two primary rules. And then there's a little more obscure one called TSR, which is the telephone sales rules. That kind of applies towards like anything that is telephone sales related. But all three of these all kind of combine together under the TCPA, because the TCPA makes references to each one of these rules inside of the primary code of the rules basically themselves. So January 27th is what everyone is talking about. Okay. And January 27th, and this change to TCPA, and it's really just one change. And the change is very simple. What TCPA rules basically said is that if you wanted to call or text or follow up with people, you needed to get a form of express written consent. And the easiest way to think about this is any online form that you've ever filled out on the internet most likely had some language with a little box that said, by submitting this form, I'm giving permission to X company and its affiliates, salespeople, partners, etc., to contact me using possibly automated means, AI, ringless voicemails, whatever it might be. So that express written consent from the TCPA gave you protection to contact people, even if they were listed on the DNC list, using whatever technology that you got permission for. Now, lead generators use that form and that disclosure to have the ability to sell that lead to multiple people. That's why they would typically say to affiliates, partners, other salespeople. So as an example, what would happen is if I was a mortgage lead generator, I might say, well, this is a purchase lead. I'm going to sell that lead to a real estate agent, because if they're looking for a purchase mortgage, then they're probably buying a home. Because they're buying a home, they're probably going to need to move. So maybe I'm going to sell that lead to a moving company. And because they're going to be in a new house, maybe I'm going to sell that lead to a solar company, and so on and so forth. So that information will be shared everywhere.
Yeah.
And what the FCC back in December 2023 is trying to do is close that loophole from one to many to one to one. What needs to happen, and this is really the only change that is taking place, is that the rule is basically going to say that when I get that authorization, instead of it saying, I give permission to company plus its affiliates, partners, associates, and whoever else they want to put on that list, it's going to need to say, I give permission to lab coat agents and the company that is going to be calling specifically to deliver the services that they are inquiring about. This is what it means to be topical. So I can't sell that lead to a mortgage company or to anybody else if they're filling out a form that is related to a real estate property. So it has to be topical and it has to list the name of the company that is going to be calling to deliver the services or to offer the services. That is the change, right? And that is the only change. So, but the problem with it and why this becomes really difficult, the internet's been around since about 1996 or so. And so all of this time, 35 years worth of online leads across all industries, not just real estate, but across everything that have used that kind of form to generate basically inquiries to get the permissions to follow up with customers. All of those in all actuality are going to get basically revoked on January 27th because that is the date of the enforcement of the new rule that says it must be one-to-one. Now, what the FCC did to try and be fair to everyone when they passed this back in December is they say, hey, we're going to give you a 1-year window to get your act together, right? For everyone to start updating their forms and doing all of that stuff. But,
Dude, realtors just found out about it, even though it's been going on.
well, yeah, I mean, when the NAR settlement stuff, first started, I was talking about it like 4 years ago, saying like as soon as it filed, I was like, well, no matter what, we're all going to be talking about it at some point, regardless of whatever happens there. So this is kind of the same thing. We've been talking about it for about a year or so with our customers and our private Facebook groups on the call action side, and trying to get everyone kind of dialed in. So, but the important part is just to really understand that the form needs to name the specific company and give you permission as the company who is following up with that particular person. Now, let me lay a disclosure. I'm not an attorney. This is basically just an opinion. You need to seek legal advice from a qualified attorney to help you to review all of your forms and do everything. So I just have to get that disclosure out there. So,
Of course, man. Yeah. Good disclosure. All right. So where does that leave then? The other question, where does that leave the dialers? Because that's one thing that we've cleared up for most people. It's like, look, if you're calling expires for sale by owners, circle prospecting or geo prospecting, all those are still the same rules apply. If they're on the do not call, don't call them. Right? That's
yeah.
it.
And
But
so if you think about it, this is what really happens at this point is if I no longer have consent to use any of that automated technology that we talked about, now the primary rule that's left over out of those three is the national DNC registry. That is the thing that we need to adhere to. And that hasn't changed since 2003. It's always been a rule. So going exactly what you're talking about with like circle prospecting, expireds, all of those kinds of things, what ends up happening is we were always supposed to adhere to the DNC registry when calling all of those types of businesses.
yep,
Nothing has changed there. The use of a dialer to make those calls depends on if the dialer falls under the TCPA's rules of what is considered a dialer. And the rule has changed. Last year, there was a ruling with the Supreme Court called Facebook. And that Facebook ruling kind of changed the guidelines a little bit, made it a little bit tighter in terms of what is considered a dialer. And it says something to the effect of, and don't quote me on this, but it's something like the system needs to have the capacity to randomly generate and produce numbers to be called, both random and sequential numbers to be dialed, basically. Now, where The traditional thing that you would think as like a robocall or robodialer is a system where they put in the first three prefixes, maybe the area code in the first digit, and then the system just starts calling sequentially all of those numbers. That is definitely a dialer, right? That's an ATDS or an automated telephone dialing system. Other dialers, and again, most companies are not going to take a position on either way if they're going to say we are or are not a dialer because the rule is so vague, basically. And the only way to really know is to kind of test it with the courts, right? And they would look at all your code and do all of that stuff. But generally speaking, if you are taking a manual action to basically dial the number and select a number, and you personally uploaded that number. So let's say like a CRM, right? You're probably going to be okay. Again, I'm not an attorney, get legal opinion on this,
Mhm.
but if you want to be super safe, you would use your cell phone. But generally speaking, the rules, the way that it's kind of set is if you're uploading the list and using a system and manually pressing a button to call that particular customer, you're probably going to be okay. But again, the rulings basically going to be important. So you need to talk to basically the technology providers are using. They'll give you some
Mhm.
guidance. But at the end of the day, basically, that's kind of what the rule is. So you just have to use some caution. And I always try and tell customers and everybody else, it's like a lot of this is just kind of gut feeling and risk, right? If you know you're doing the right thing and that customer is expecting your call, probably not, that's not going to be a person that's going to come after you, right? If you have a relationship with someone, right, and you've been following up with them for months and you've been doing the right thing, probably not going to be a big deal, right? Where it's going to be a big deal is people that are, cold calling and doing all of that stuff. And it's more so going to be a big deal just because the plaintiff bar knows that now basically everyone's prior permissions are pretty much being revoked, and there's the enforcement of this new one-to-one rule. So that's where, the plaintiff's attorneys are really going to be looking at this because the FCC, like if you made a call, they're not going to turn back around and chase after you because you're one agent. They're going to go after big, spammers and stuff like that. But really, some of this enforcement is probably going to fall more so on the plaintiff's bar that are looking for customers to build these complaints to, and also basically directly on the DNC. Like consumers are savvy nowadays; they can do searches online to figure out how to file a complaint and do all of that stuff. And those complaints are going to end up towards you. So,
Very true. Very true. Then last, there's a question that's part of this one, Jesse.
sure.
Bobby's asking, well, what about a triple line dialer, specifically to call expireds? Where does that leave the triple line dialer?
Yeah, I mean, that's auto dialing and selecting the next number probably would stay away from that kind of stuff. And actually, triple line dialers are illegal in a bunch of states because what ends up happening is you can't exceed a certain amount of hung up calls. And all of you guys have been at the other end of this. Your phone rings and you answer, and then there's like this silence, and then the call hangs up,
I
right?
hate that.
That's someone using a triple line dialer. Like, so if you don't like it, you
Hmm.
probably shouldn't use it on other people, right?
That's funny.
Yeah.
Because
So, mhm.
but my background's in telemarketing before I
Yeah.
jumped into real estate while I was in college, in high school. And
That's
even
my
where I
first job
worked here.
too.
Oh, I didn't know. Wait, where did you work?
I worked for a mortgage company called Green Tree Financial in the city of Orange, basically, and we telemarketed for 2020s. That was a 20% rate, 20-point second mortgage back in 1987.
Dude,
So, yeah, that's funny.
I I dialed for ink cartridges and window sales and then
Uh,
door to windows, all in Van Nuys,
wow,
North.
wow.
That's
Yeah.
but we never,
Funny.
even those guys were like, you know what? We don't want to do triple
Yeah.
line dialers. Let's just do
Triple
one to
line
one. I was
dialers. Yeah. And if
uh,
you look at like if let's say if you use any of the big technology providers that are out there, like they're going to give you the lists, and most of those lists they're going to tell you if that phone number is on the DNC. And they're just saying, this is the information that you're buying from us. What you do with it is your responsibility, right? Because at the end, what everyone needs to understand and why it's kind of hard to get an answer on this is that you are a business owner and you're responsible to run your business. It's nobody else's responsibility to run your business and to run it correctly and to comply with the rules. As a business owner, that is your responsibility, right?
Yeah, that's
So,
true.
so we
Jesse,
need to accept that.
really quick, because I want to
Sure.
verify your
Yeah, yeah,
product. Now
yeah,
now a
no
lot of
problem.
people are coming with these questions. First, this is recorded, so it's on our YouTube channel in Lab Code Agents. So please go there, and then we'll also send it out to you if you registered. I know over 200 of you registered. There's about a little over 100 of you watching right now. So yes, this is recorded and it'll be sent to you, but you can also go to the channel, which Young just put in there. The other
Okay.
part to this is that if you're concerned, which you should be, right? If you're calling expireds and FISBOs and you're calling them daily, we don't as much anymore, but we still call them. If you've got Red X, it says DNC there. So you're safe.
Right.
Like you
Yeah.
don't have to worry about it. Just make sure you don't call those. So Red
Yeah.
X has you covered. The other
Yeah.
part to this is we've got 150,000 people in our database. That's us. But
Right.
we've been doing online leads for a while, on and off. And
Yeah.
so for us, we need something like this. Like we have a database and we need call action to go through and check. So take me through what you do here, Jesse, specifically. Like if I start the free verified DNC scan, what happens and
Sure.
what should I expect?
Yeah. So basically what we're trying to do, what we're offering to everyone since last November, or since November, basically, is if you've got a large database of leads that you've generated from your own website, third-party sources, and stuff like that, you can do a export of that file. And basically what we need is we need name, phone number, email. You want to put addresses if you've got address data as well in there. And you can just do a simple CSV export. You can do this in Follow Up Boss. We have detailed help docs in reference to that. You could do it with Sierra Interactive. We have detailed help docs for that, Lofty, any of the CRMs that you're currently using. So once you have that data, you'll create basically a free verify account. And it will ask you for an email, ask you for a phone number. We do a two-party verification in there. And then after that, you just pick that CSV file. And you want to make sure that the CSV file has got the header to tell us, like, these are emails, this is phones, this is names. And primarily, you want to focus on everything that has phone numbers. So what will end up happening is you'll upload the information, and then it's going to give you this free contact audit report, which is that dashboard that you're currently seeing. And so it'll analyze the data and it'll tell you, hey, based on the, 100, 200, 500, 100,000, 200,000 contacts, what percentage of your data is complete or incomplete? So we're trying to give you like some insights to tell you, hey, like if you got a bunch of CRM data and all you have is a name and a phone number, you should probably work on getting more accurate information, because if you can no longer call and text that person, what you're left over with is email, direct mail, retargeting, remarketing, so on and so forth. So the first report is just going to give you like an overall health of your current database. The second part of this is that we take a random sample of basically the entire database and actually scan the real information. And based on that sample data, we'll do a statistical analysis, and we're going to tell you, hey, somewhere between 40, 50, 60%, whatever the percentage is of your leads are on the DNC. And so this is this free report so that you can kind of assess what's my risk level that I have in terms of following up with these leads inside of my database. Now you
Got it.
can,
And Jesse,
uh-huh,
really quick,
sure.
we're gonna go a little over. I just texted the team. You watched me.
Yeah, yeah, no problem. That's fine.
It's okay going over with you
Yep. Yeah, yeah, no problem. No
because
problem.
we've got some questions. So I figure, you know what?
Sure. Yeah,
Let's give everybody probably an extra 10 minutes or so. So,
sure. Yeah,
all
then
right.
the next report that we do on there is the reassigned phone numbers. So what we do, because in the real estate you space, like a lot of the leads, it's a really long buy cycle, like 12 to 18 months is kind of the general window. But some of us
Mhm.
have databases with leads that are 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. So call action or verify is the only product that what it does, it also searches for reassign or deactivated phone numbers. Now, this might not seem like a big deal, but let's just kind of think about this through. It was just Christmas. A lot of consumers that don't depend on their phone number for their primary source of business, they may say like, hey, I want to get a free iPhone. And T-Mobile might say, in order to get a free iPhone, what you have to do basically is get a new phone number. And so that phone number will now get deactivated. And then they create a new phone number on a new carrier. And then that old phone number will get reassigned to somebody else. Now, if you've got old leads that you're following up with, now you may be contacting someone that it's not, they never even filled out the application. And this is where we're getting like that classic, wrong number that everyone just assumes is a wrong number, or, that they're getting brushed off by the consumer who just doesn't want to be not ready to buy or sell. But the reality
Mhm.
is there's a very large percentage of these phone numbers that are really being reassigned, something to the tune of like 100 million phone numbers a year. Okay.
Damn.
It's a huge percentage. Generally, what we see is somewhere between 6 to 10% of your data is going to churn over and that phone number is going to get reassigned. And if you're contacting those person, even if you think you had express written consent, you're actually
Yeah.
you're following up with the wrong person. So that consent does not count. And the last thing that we do is we can validate for all of the emails. So we'll validate your entire email. There's something called email degradation. What that basically means is that over time, people cancel their emails or they got an email that they used that was only to sign up for a bunch of spam stuff. It's like a temporary email. So we'll validate all the emails. And the reason why this becomes important is if we remove the protections of the TCPA that gave us permission to follow up with someone using any kind of regulated technology, and it gave us permission to follow up with them even if they were on the DNC until they revoked that permission, then we got to fall back to DNC. And if they are on the DNC, our only options are to basically email that particular person, direct mail that particular person, maybe use the information to do retargeting and remarketing to try and get them back to your website,
Mhm.
or get them to call or text you. Because if they call or text you, you get temporary protection over the DNC that's called an established business relationship that gives you a 90-day window to contact that person and to talk to them to try and move that relationship to the next step, even if they are on the DNC. But that is only if they contact you directly. Okay, you cannot reach out to that particular person. Also, a lot of us have, past clients. Understand that your permission with those past clients, again, if they are on the DNC, and why this is going to be really important to keep your long-term relationship with those customers, is that your protection for the DNC is only 18 months for past clients. After 18 months, if they're on the DNC and you don't have express written consent or at least an understanding that if you call that particular person, they're going to remember you, then you could be at risk. I say this that ultimately we should be keeping in touch. We should be following up with all of our past customers all of the time anyway, right? Like that's like doesn't make sense to not talk to our past customers for 18 months. So if we continuously stay top of mind with them and they see us on a regular basis and we invite them to our customer events and we share important information with them and share home valuations with them, we're keeping that relationship going. And then basically that person is probably going to stay safe. But those of you that might have clients that are 5 years old and you forgot about them and you haven't done anything and you're coming out of left field to follow up with them, understand it. That person is on the DNC. There is a level of risk there because it's only valid for 18 months. And all of this stuff that I'm talking about is all available in the TCPA code. We have a help doc. If you search in the help.callaction.co, we have some very detailed help docs, about 500 or 600 pages worth in there. There's a basic TCPA checklist in there and actually gives you the links to all of the codes so that you can do your own research and understand exactly how
Is
this
this
works.
You said it's under call action?
It's under
All right.
help.callaction.co. So
So it's
help.
on the main side. Got it. Let me go. Help.
Yeah, it's on the support. There's a link at the bottom basically. So it's help, HELP dot. There you go. And if you just type in there basic TCPA in that top search bar, it's going to give you a checklist, and it's also going to show you some language in there from basically a law firm that is kind of renowned, and it's a law firm that we've used for a lot of stuff over the years, basically. So that's your checklist. And this just gives you an example of exactly what that express written consent looks like. This is an example from Zillow. And then you could see the new example of what you're supposed to get, which names the one-to-one company. And those are all the important details. So if basically you were buying leads from third-party sources, I would recommend you use this checklist, act like a customer on any of these sites that you're planning to buy third-party leads from, or even register on your own site as a customer and see what that language in there, and compare it to what that form is supposed to look like. That way, you know that you'll be on the right side of the changes post January 27.
All right. I saved that and I'm sending it over to the team. I put it into the
Yep, no
chat.
problem. No
Let's
problem.
go through some of the questions. You ready?
Yeah, of course. Fire
All
away.
right. First one, for those that missed it, what verbiage do we use for the permission? I put up the link there. We just went over it
Yeah.
on call action site. That's good.
Yep. That's
If,
also
if,
legal advice. You want to probably, get that
yeah,
pass or
listen,
review.
any advice either from us here or on any webinar, including this one,
Yeah,
it's just us talking and
right,
giving you what we know, right?
right,
Could it be missing things? Of course, right? We're not attorneys on any of this. So get
right.
advice from your broker, from your attorney, from anybody else as well, just to verify, please.
Yeah.
Leah, if the law change requires one-to-one authorization, does this now stop lead companies from selling or providing leads at all?
It doesn't stop them. What most likely will happen is they'll develop either exclusive relationships. So they'll sell that lead to one company and only one company, which is actually going to be good for business, right? If we think about like the long-term impact of this, instead of looking at it from fear, being like, oh my God, let's look at this from the upside. In 3 to 4 months, what's going to end up happening is that when someone fills out a lead, they're not going to get 55 different phone calls, hopefully. They're going to know that you are the company who is calling them and following up with them. That should actually increase the call connect rate. It should increase your ability to have a conversation with that customer. It should increase your ability to convert at a higher level because you're just going to have less competition at the end of the day. So the downside of this might be that leads get more expensive, right? If we look at what Zillow's doing as an example, moving everything over to Flex, it's a lot easier for them to get one-to-one consent because they already know who the Flex team is going to be based on that location that's going to get it. Now, it also doesn't mean if you look at that form that is in there, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's only going to be sold to one person. Some of the lead generators may be able to get creative and have a checklist of maybe multiple companies that are on there. But every company that is going to receive that lead needs to be named in that form. It needs to be clear and conspicuous on the form of exactly who's going to be calling them. So that's the core change. We call it one-to-one. It's because when they fill that out, they're giving permission specifically to the companies that are named on that express written consent. And that is it. Ultimately, you probably want that to name your company. If they visit your website should have a disclosure saying that I'm giving permission to the name of the company that you or your brokerage basically that you belong to. Right. So
Yep.
that's what you really want to pay attention to.
Like Stuart said earlier, get the opt-in during discovery process website registration. That's right. What's up, Stuart? Yep. You got it.
Yeah, and that's always been, nothing is changing there, right? Really, we just have this one date where old authorizations are no longer valid. They probably are going to get revoked. Now, some of them are still valid because some companies made changes ahead of time, right? So companies like Ylopo, when there was changes with AI voice calling, they updated their consent. Now, I don't know the exact date that they have that on there or where that form is, but might want to talk to them, see if you're a Ylopo user, take a look at that. And then, any of the other third-party lead providers, you'll definitely want to reach out to them. I know that I spoke to Mark Graham from Realtor.com. If you are a market VIP, they're going to be guaranteeing basically that you have one-to-one consent and be able to provide you proof as well, basically. So big shout out to Realtor.com for leaning into this change kind of going forward and trying to help everybody. If you're buying leads from smaller lead sources, that's where you need to use caution to begin with, and probably should have always used caution. But just kind of go from there.
Okay, awesome. Next question. Don's asking, how about a texting company? If you download a list of for sale by owners for a campaign on texts, how would that work? Do you know?
Well, this again is not legal advice, but if you look at the TCPA rules, it basically says that that would most likely be considered an unsolicited offer, right? Because even though you're sending it through a phone line, which basically means it falls under TCPA rules, also falls under DNC because it's related to telephones. Calls and text, again, are considered the same exact thing. So if you are cold texting people and they are listed on the DNC, you are basically not adhering to the rules, and that will be most likely a problem, right? But again, contact your own attorney, so on and so forth. But I would highly discourage that. It's no different than circle prospecting on, using Red X data or something like that, and knowing that that list is on the DNC, right? That's the same
Yeah.
exact thing.
Let's stay
So
away from calling people on the DNC, please.
yeah, the
Or
foundation of all of this is if you remove TCPA, is the main rule is the DNC. That's why it's so important, and that's why we focus on trying to give you the data that you need through Verify to quickly and easily get that information so that you can make that determination and segment your database as quickly as possible, sunset the part that might be on the DNC with a valid phone number. You focus on email. Don't call, don't text, because then you're opening yourself up. The ones that are not on the DNC, business as usual.
all right, next. We still have 100 people on, so
Yep.
this is engaging. We've got probably 4 more questions, so 5 extra
Sure.
minutes. You okay, Jesse?
Yep, no problem.
All right.
Just for
So
you.
thanks. I pushed off my next meeting a little bit. So,
No
okay.
problem.
Do let's see. Do I need to get a new permission form for my 1000 CRM database that I have had for over 40 years? How does that work?
If that person, depends if you had permission to begin with, I would say initially, right?
Let's just
Depends
go
on,
with yes. Let's go with
yeah,
yes.
it depends on where the lead came from originally, right? So if the lead originally came in from an online form and you had express written consent that gave you permission to follow up with them using any regulated technology, that express consent gave you the permission to follow up with them even if they were on the DNC. So in a situation like that, what you would probably want to do is check to see who is on the DNC. If they're really old leads, then depends on your relationship, right? This is kind of like risk. Like if you think you're going to call that person and they have no clue who you are, you might get in trouble, right? There is a chance that that person is going to say, hey, I'm on the DNC, leave me alone. But that is,
That's a
you
good
are
point.
going to know how your relationship is with the consumers that are in your CRM. All that we could tell you is these are the rules. The DNC basically says if a phone number is on there, you don't have permission to contact them. And if you do want to contact them, you either need to get that as express written consent, or they need to inquire with you. So you need to do some direct marketing to them to get them to call or text you, send you an email, create an inquiry so that you could reestablish that relationship with that customer.
Yeah, I like that. And the easiest way of doing that is retargeting, right? If
Yeah,
you got
you could retarget. Sierra Interactive offers a retargeting campaign. Ylopo offers it. Street Text, I believe, offers it. Like, there's a lot of companies that will give you some technology to make this very easy. Those are all companies that we work with and partner with. And so if we give you that data and segment that list, you can give them that CSV file. They can build custom audiences and retarget and remarket those people. And then you internally can focus on email, send out email campaigns to try and drive those people back to your website, register for your events, get them to call or text you, and start that relationship again. Just keep this really simple. Real estate is based on relationships,
yeah.
right? If we really think about this, like if we look at the data, Zillow is happy when a Zillow Flex team can convert online leads at 5 to 8%. And they're over the moon with that, right? That means that 92% of the leads don't close. If we look at the NAR data of where the majority of business comes from, is a consumer is going to interact with multiple people, submit multiple forms online, right? Because nobody slows down to build a real relationship with them. That's why they have to keep doing this. And 50% of people, when they're ready to buy, they actually ask for referral from friends and family. And the reason why that happens is because nobody has earned their trust in any of those previous interactions. So we need to have a shift in mindset of going back to slowing down, to building relationships with customers. Because if we have a relationship with them, they're not going to care if you're calling them and texting them. It's the people that you don't have relationships with. Those people are the ones that are going to file complaints against you. And those are the ones that will respond to marketing from attorney firms and stuff like that to try and build basically, cases against you. So just focus on doing the right thing with your customers, developing those relationships, and then everything should be okay. And adhering to the rules that have always existed. Like, that's important. Like, you're a business owner, treat your business responsibly, understand the rules, and follow those rules. And DNC being the primary one. You always want to verify that data against the DNC. This is the hard reset that we're all going to have right now. It's what I
Yeah.
called first principle thinking. Aristotle basically, is the person is behind this. You take a problem and you simplify it down to its lowest common denominator. Elon Musk does the same thing. So it's, if we don't have express written consent, what is left over? That's first principle thinking. The one guideline that we have to adhere to is the do not call registry. It is the DNC list. Then from there, you go back up. If I get that person to call me, I fall under an established business window relationship valid for 90 days. If I get them to fill out a form online, I have permission to follow up with them with whatever technology was named in that form for as long as they give me that permission until they revoke that permission and say, stop, leave me alone, don't contact me anymore. And there's other rules that are coming in April that are going to make this maybe a little bit more complicated in terms of the revocation that, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Or if you follow me, I'll share some of that stuff as we get there too.
Yeah. And then lastly, listen, this is a
Sure.
great question. You brought it up a little bit with
Yep.
Ylopo. Kendra
Yep.
says, what's up, Kendra? Is there a new AI? There is a new AI company who's doing cold calls. Hold on. Who's doing cold calls? I'm going to assume this would be a no-go. All right.
Again, that's legal advice. You probably want to contact that particular company. But the interpretation is that AI, last year, the FCC basically said that AI generated phone calls require express written consent no matter what. That it wasn't considered telemarketing just because a robot is doing it. It fell into these guidelines that we call regulated technology. Regulated technology would be pre-recorded voice, AI, would be multi-line dialers, anything that could be classified as an ATDS. All of that stuff falls under this umbrella of regulated technology. And when it comes to AI calling, that is basically something that was, the rules were changed mid last year. And so most companies that offer that have updated all of their policies, telling you that you need to have express written consent from that particular customer. And so maybe, I don't know the company, but you'll need to contact them. That's probably a no-go. Let's put it that way. Again, contact your attorney. This is not legal advice.
Yeah, if they're cold calling and you have DNCs on those as well, I'm giving like
Yeah,
that's a
that's, again, let's just use that first principles thinking. They're on the DNC. You can't call them no matter what, right?
yeah.
You're opening yourself up to basically liability. And this includes, I will clarify one thing too, and this, a lot of people get this kind of confused. Like agents are going to say, well, the mobile number is being used for business. That's a business line. That's not true, right? So what happens is mobile numbers, first and foremost, are classified as residential numbers, even if part of the usage is using it for business. So you need to be very careful with that. So those of you that are doing recruiting and stuff like that, keep in mind, of that particular rule. Again, this is all DNC stuff. All of these codes are available for you to read, go through some of these guidelines, be a responsible business owner, understand what's there, hire basically, get some legal advice, talk to your broker. DNC rules are available on NAR website, right? So you can see some stuff on there. So you want to get compliant with that, and just think that the DNC is the foundation of everything. You have TCPA on one side, DNC is the core bedrock, and then you have telephone sales rules on the other side.
All right. And then if anybody comes in, gives you consent on the form, how long does that last?
Until they take it back, until they revoke it, until they say, leave me alone, right? That's what that consent is giving you, is permission to follow up with them for as long as you can.
So that means it doesn't end after 6 months, 9 months, 18 months. It could just go on now that you have consent.
Now that you have consent, until they revoke that. So if they're, on the phone and they tell you, hey, leave me alone, take me off your list, you need to honor that. And according to TCPA rules, you're supposed to have an internal do not call list. So you have the public facing do not call list, which is the public registry. But internally in your CRM, you're supposed to maintain an internal DNC list that's supposed to be shared with everyone within the company, so that everyone understands that that person has revoked their rights as well.
So you can't just delete them from your CRM. They have to stay there and says do not call. They could even be a text.
That's more legal advice. You're supposed to have an internal list that people can cross-reference. So,
All right.
and that's stuff that, like, on our platform, on the call action side of things, like, we maintain all of this stuff. We've done all of this compliance work for you in the back end. It all happens kind of automatically. So if you got a text message and someone said, leave me alone, like, we automatically put them onto a DNC list. That's kind of some of our baseline technology. And then we scan against everything, which is all of the products that you now have available, and verify as a non-call action user.
Perfect. All right, everyone, put that link there, callaction.co/verify. Go ahead, jump in there, take a look, use it. Please just take care of yourself. Go get advice from your attorney. If you don't have one, go to your broker. Your broker does have one. If you are the broker and you don't have one, go find one and then do this
brokers,
with Jeff.
it is important, because keep in mind, all of your agents, they're under your umbrella, even though they're 1099 and self-employed contractors. You're still the person who has oversight on them. So it's really important to make sure that you have everyone that is within your brokerage is basically being compliant, because these things will travel uphill basically.
And fast in this current state that we're in.
Correct.
So,
Correct. Yeah.
Jesse,
I'll leave you with this. Scan the database, segment it into 2 groups: on the DNC, not DNC. Email people that are on the DNC, people that are not on the DNC, follow up with them, build relationships, establish those relationships. Everybody else that it is on the DNC, do your marketing, build those relationships, get them to basically call and text you, and then continue to build relationships, expand your sphere of influence, and then you're going to do fine.
I love that. That's actually really good advice, man. Thank you.
Uh,
All right, everyone. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Great day.